optimizing for channels without really fixing your brand positioning and your brand story. If the heart of the brand is not clear, the performance, we were not selling ourselves, we were not selling our agency, we were selling digital. What does digital do for you?
What does a high-performing marketing team would look like in 2026? What is a right way for organizations to adopt to AI?
It's not just going to be human beings.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Growth Circle, a show by ROAS Digital, where we decode the art and science of modern marketing. This is a space where marketing leaders, founders, and practitioners come together to share real stories, real playbooks, and real lessons that shape business growth today. Today's guest is someone whose career truly reflects the evolution of digital marketing. From the early days of digital agencies in India to leading global brands at Ogilvy to driving large-scale digital transformation across legacy retail businesses in Dubai, and now building the growth engine for a global travel tech B2B SaaS company, it's a pleasure to welcome Namrata Balwani. Thank you so much for joining us, Namrata.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Namrata, for joining us. So I think, Namrata, let's head to the origin, right? Your story. So you had a fascinating 20 plus year journey across agency, consulting, and corporate leadership. Can you start by walking us through your career path and how did this journey unfolded for you?
Sure. I've had a very non-linear, but I would still like to think intentional career. So I started out in advertising. I co-founded one of India's first digital agencies called Media to Win. Did that for about 10 years. But then I moved to Ogilvy, and the move to Ogilvy helped me really sharpen the brand and storytelling craft because that's what Ogilvy is known for. And then ended up at the Landmark Group in Dubai, where I was leading digital transformation, digital marketing, customer analytics, and omni-channel CX. So it basically meant a shift from being on the agency side to really understanding a business and trying to develop a revenue generating marketing function inside a business. And today I'm in B2B, which is again a whole different area for me. It's about building a global marketing engine for TPConnects, which is a travel tech company. But I think the main thread that I like to think is the common part is about taking complexity and creating clarity and using creativity and data in everything.
So you mentioned that you co-founded the digital agency. I think back in it was 2005, I believe.
Yes.
When digital was still in its infancy and I was at school and all of that. And what did digital marketing look like back then, right? Like say,
Yeah. Well, I think this is when people tell me they were in school. This is the moment when I start feeling really old. But well, what it was like at the time, it was very raw. It was very scrappy, but I think it was very thrilling because
okay.
it's not. There were no tools. There were no frameworks. It was your
Mm-hmm.
own. You brought your own insight into it. A lot of experimentation. We then figured out what is social media because in 2005, I think Facebook was maybe a year old. We had to figure
Yeah.
out what is email marketing, what exactly are these viral films. Viral films were a really big deal back then, as they are
Mm.
in a different form. And then what is performance marketing? So I think what it looked like to me at the time was we had to rely on old school traditional marketing principles, which is
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, and then understand how does it fit in a platform and technology play.
Got it. So in those early years, right, what was the biggest challenge, right? Convincing brands, right? When I started my digital marketing journey, there was this traditional media and digital media that it was clearly separate, and brands invested in TVCs and large hoardings and all of that. But to convince for digital investment or to educate them how much an impact right now, I don't think brands have that anymore. But how did you those were the challenges at that point of time, right? I think it was one of the biggest challenge.
Absolutely. I think the fact was that brands did not see digital as business critical. It was like a nice to have or an experimentation. And to be fair, we had to prove our value one small win at a time. And initially, that value was creativity and innovation. So let's say we brought brands like L'Oreal, Microsoft, Lenovo onto the digital medium at the time,
Okay.
they were not really looking at what's the business value, because the money they were assigning to
Mm,
it was like 0.001% of the
mm,
budget. But it really stood out in the form of the creativity and innovation and the ability to reach people individually, right? So you see a
mhm,
bad ad and you respond to it, but I know exactly how you respond to it versus somebody else. I think they saw a lot of value in that. But over time, it was really about saying, how do we demystify the medium? We were not selling ourselves. We were not selling our agency. We were selling digital. What does digital do for you?
mm.
What's the language of growth? And how can it really help you reach your consumers and then deliver some sort of commercial metrics as well?
Understood. Say, looking back today, right, which skills from that digital era still matters the most?
I think the pure play skills of understanding the
Mm,
business, understanding consumer insight, and understanding human behavior, those are the principles,
mm,
whether it was back then or it is today in the age of AI and its role in marketing. You
mhm,
have to go back to the core principles, which is understanding a consumer and understanding a business. And therefore, what drives revenue? Why does a consumer want to spend? And how can a customer attract, I mean, how can a company attract them with the right customer experience?
mm. Understood. So from your own agency, you moved to Ogilvy, right?
Yeah.
After running your own agency, like say a global network like Ogilvy,
Yeah.
working with brands like BMW and Dabur, right? How different was that world from an independent agency life, right? Like say where you started your own agency and moving to a global network. How
Yeah.
was it?
Well, I think the primary difference in, let's
Mm-hmm,
say, being an entrepreneur to being part of a large machine is your role is quite defined. When you're running your own business, everything is your problem, right? And everything is your area, even. So sales, business development, managing customers, then doing
mm,
campaigns, the financial side of it, the operational side of it, everything's your problem. Whereas when you come into a large network, there are certain things that get taken care of at a network level. But what Ogilvy really helped me
mm,
do was sharpen the discipline, because you really understand that at scale, creativity can mean something. It's not just an idea.
mm.
You have to understand, how do you build that brand with consistency? How do you always protect your brand narrative no matter what? Because that's what's going to ultimately drive business value for you. So that was a great learning experience.
In large global organizations, right? What does brand excellence really mean, right? You said consistency, right? Like that's one which I could think of.
Yeah.
But what's your take on that?
Well, I think brand excellence is it's about distinctiveness. It's about
Mm-hmm.
memory. Consumers have to remember you. And then it's about
Mm,
what you stand for has to be absolutely clear. I think big
got it.
brands, they don't necessarily do everything, but
Mm-hmm.
they do the right things and they constantly do them with discipline. And that's why some brands have stood around for 200 years and some brands don't survive
Mm,
for even 10. So it's really about
understood.
saying, whatever are your core principles, you stay true to them.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, you also evolve with the times. Otherwise, you're a true brand, but if you haven't evolved with the times, you go bust or you're defunct. So it's really about marrying these two pieces, the principle of what you stand for and where's the market moving and how we relevant in that market.
Got it. Say many marketers struggle, right, to balance brand building and performance marketing. From your experience, how do you integrate, like, say, the creativity and data in a way that we truly serve the business goals, right? Brand building should also lead to, say, the end ROI for the brand, as well as performance marketing, which is purely for ROI, right?
Yeah.
Maybe your take on that would really be insightful.
I think it's really about saying,
Mm-hmm.
what's the business goal I'm trying to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the most important thing. It's not about whether I do a brand campaign or a performance campaign. First of all, what's the business goal? Who is the consumer? Why would they come to us? As long as you define all of these, then you're looking at how creativity can help you get a customer closer to you, because ultimately that's
Mm,
where the memorability and the distinctiveness comes from.
yeah.
And then you say, But data has a role because I'm not just going to put this out everywhere, and I'm not going to put the same message everywhere. I'm going to understand my consumer and say, give the right message at the right time and measure that to make sure that my brand marketing initiatives ultimately contribute to revenue. So it's not one versus the other. I think it always has to be both at the same time.
Got it. Say, let's move to a different section where we talk about your digital transformation in legacy businesses.
Yes.
You moved to Landmark from Ogilvy, right, in Dubai. That was a major shift from a agency leadership to a corporate transformation role. Like, say, what motivated you to take the leap,
Yeah.
right, from starting an agency to going to a global network like Ogilvy and then going into a business, right? That's like, what was the motivation behind that leap?
So for me, I think the motivation for anything I've done in my career is evolution and learning something new. I think
Mm,
that's the mainstay. But I'll say that what really excited me about this opportunity at Landmark was I wanted to go beyond brand campaigns and really understand systems on the
mm,
business. How do you measure the customer analytics? What does the analytics say? How does it contribute to the revenue of the business? What role does loyalty play? The omni-channel journey, the customer experience, what role does all of this play? And to do
mm-hmm,
that, I think Landmark was great because Landmark is a major retail and hospitality player in the Middle East and also in Asia.
mm-hmm,
Um, Scale, it has millions of consumers. Also, it had legacy systems. So I got this opportunity
mm,
start linking offline and online data, which was a first for me, but it was a first in the industry at that time as well, because this was more than 10 years ago in this region. And it's really about saying, can I create measurable impact? Because when you're on the
mm,
side, you create impact, but you don't always know how does it impact the business, because unless the business
yeah.
shares it with you, you're always going to be on the outside. And I really wanted to be on the inside of that.
Got it. Say, many traditional businesses, right, while doing digital transformation, they don't know where to begin, right? What was your first starting point, right? You would recommend, I think almost all bigger traditional businesses are moving into digital, but I think there are still a lot, right, who are not fully into digital, but they're trying to begin, right? What would be your first recommendation for them, right? Like a starting point.
I think the starting point is always the customer journey. So it's not so much
Mm,
the tool, it's not about the technology. It's about what's our customer
mm,
journey, where is it broken, why is it broken, and why do we need this to be fixed? What's the business metric or the
okay.
outcome that we hope to achieve? And only then do we start picking out what technology do we need. If you're looking at it, it has to be rooted in real customer value. And that's why the customer journey is
Mm-hmm.
important. Then the transformation becomes much simpler if you know why you're doing something.
Understood. Okay. So you've spoken about, like, say, in our previous conversation, right? You have spoken about building customer analytics and loyalty systems, right? And how do organizations actually create a true single view of the customer
Yeah.
across offline and online channels, right? Online, it's much easier, but how do they integrate the offline journey along with the online channels?
Yeah. So this is a complex subject because there are many
Mm-hmm.
elements to it. I'll say the starting point is for a single customer view is your single identifier.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to
Got
identify
it.
that this is one individual? Then where are you recording this, and how do you know that where you're recording it is your single source of truth? And
Mm-hmm.
then how does the data flow? So you need not only the identifier, but to say all this data coming in is actually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
It is translating to this single customer view, and I can now relay the data one way or another way, offline to online, online to offline, always
Mm-hmm.
maintain that accuracy. And once that works, then you start layering things like how do we do the right personalization? How do we collect the right set for the customer? What kind of programs do we run to make sure that it's meaningful for the customer to keep coming back? But this part, which is identifying what makes this unique in this day and age of privacy and obviously GDPR and
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to take data for the sake of data, but having customers volunteer data because they're giving a better experience, all goes back to this: how do we identify who's a unique customer?
For businesses that are still very offline heavy today, right? What is one practical play they can do or execute as we move into 2026?
Well, I think it's very dependent on the business, but I'll say start with
Mm,
one part of your customer journey and understand what is the data that you want to link at that point in time, and prove it with one implementation, one automation. So perhaps if you say, I feel that my customers who walk into my store are buying this product, but it is not getting relayed when they come online. Don't try to link everything. Just figure out, how do I fix this one product? And then say, how do I do retention only for this one product
mm,
perhaps? Somewhere I think it's about proving it either with one segment, one use case, and then scaling it. Because a lot
mm.
of inertia for the traditional businesses, how do we tackle everything at one time?
Yeah,
Then you don't tackle anything at all.
got it. Say, take one step at a time and try to solve the first challenge and then move on to the other. Got it. Say, you have implemented, like, say, large technology platforms, right? In your in Landmark, right? But how should companies choose the right tech without getting distracted by a lot of shiny tools, right?
Yeah.
And there are also a lot of alternatives as well. Like, how do you go about choosing the right tool?
I think, well, look, the starting point is always going to be, what do I want
Mm-hmm.
to achieve out of this? How does the business drive value from this? What is my customer journey telling me? And therefore, now, what are my use cases? So you need to have very
Mm-hmm.
clearly defined use cases that you then say, for these use cases, I need this data. And to get this data stitched together, I need a tool that can do this particular function. So now let me find the tool that lets me do this. I think that's more intentional, and you don't get lost in this shiny new tools kind of idea. And you also don't try to create complexity, because the idea of the tool is to create simplicity, not to make it so complex that your teams are again overloaded. So if you start with the right use case, your teams understand why that use case is important and why they
Mm-hmm.
need to use technology to solve the use case. And then you pick the best of breed for that use case.
Got it. So you describe your differentiator as creative, human-led brand building combined with analytics and business contribution, right? How did you develop this philosophy?
Well, I think it sounds much grander when you say it. What I've always tried to do is say, you know, you want to build a brand that people can remember, but you
Mm-hmm.
also build an engine that creates pipeline or revenue contribution. And both of these have to work together, because what moves people is always narrative. People, even
Mm,
in TV, it's the narrative that's the most important, and that's moving a person. But it's the
mm,
analytics that's helping us derive the right insight for the narrative, or the right orchestration to get the right revenue into the business.
mm. Got
And
it.
so this is fascinating, but I don't, and I said right in the beginning, between brand and performance, or tools and brand building, all of these have to coexist. If any one part is broken, the other part is not going to do much for you.
Got it. Since we are talking about brand and performance, right? Right now in this world, I think we are dominated by dashboards and performance metrics.
Yes.
Why does a brand, say, emotion still matters?
I think it matters because at the end of the day, we are all humans and we don't
Mhm.
always think rationally. So if
Yeah.
I log onto a website I'm scrolling, what they call doom scrolling, okay? I'm
Mm,
doing something at 2 a.m. I may not have rational thoughts. I may go to Amazon and purchase something, but it might be completely impulsive. And then the next
mm,
morning, I go to work and I have to buy a software tool for my office. I may start putting my rational hat on, but I'm still going to go to a website and say, does this feel like a brand I want to talk to? So it's always this, that emotions are what drive us, because we are human beings. And at the end of the day, with all the dashboards, the brands that win are the ones that make you feel something, that make you feel like this brand understands me, this brand understands my needs. And the data is helping that brand deliver that experience to you by giving you what you're looking for.
say, can you share an example from your experience, right, where data unlocked creative opportunities
Yeah.
or where creativity helped interpret data better?
Well, I'll give you an example which might work a bit in both ways. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So this was at my time again at Landmark, where they have a really
Mm.
famous gym chain. It's one of the largest gym chains in the Middle East region.
Okay.
And the goal obviously is to drive membership for our gyms. But at the end of the day, we really wanted to understand, why does a customer want to join a gym, right?
Mm.
Is it I'm turning 50 and I want to look my best? Is it I'm getting married and I want to look my best? Is it
Mm.
I'm tired of how I feel and I want to get.
Mm.
So the motivation, while you want to look your best, but the motivation could be very different. And so what we went into is, when we saw the membership forms, we started asking these questions and then started looking at, okay, these are, let's say, the top themes why people
Mm-hmm.
want to join the gym. And based on these top themes, how do we now understand what sort of lead nurturing do we do? Because everyone who comes in doesn't necessarily sign a membership at the first time. So
Mm-hmm.
we are using the brand narrative because it's coming out of this data. We are shaping that brand narrative and using tools to deliver this personalized messaging. So if someone says it's because they want to get married and they want to look their best, the kind of
Mm-hmm.
fitness tips, the kind of communication we give them is quite different.
Got
And
it.
then we also layered it with a certain narrative, which was, if the customer is not convinced in 3-4 months, right, that they want to join a gym, we keep sending them communication. It's not really working. Can we
Mm-hmm.
use brand evangelism? Can we find our own gym customers who've been in these different life stages, who achieved something, and now use that uh, emotion to go back to
Mm.
the day and build this? And we really saw a rise not only in gym memberships, but a rise in how fast they convert. So let's say something that took 5 months may now start taking 3 months or 2 months, which is a major win. We also started looking at, if they're taking a 3-month gym membership, how often are they renewing it? If they're taking a monthly, are they just lapsing, or are they renewing it? And both of this sort of interplay of data on both sides helped us really build a much more effective marketing mechanism.
Understood. Got it. Say many marketers, right, feel intimidated by analytics, right?
Yeah.
What analytics skills do you believe every marketer must build today?
So I have to say, for all the marketers who are scared of analytics, that I grew up
Mm.
hating, and I landed up in
Mm.
maths. One can't escape math. But I think what's important is to start understanding that these are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are not just numbers that an operations team is sending out or an analytics team is sending out. Behind it are actual real customers that marketers are meant to serve. And so you need to understand analytics by saying, what are the levers that drive a business? Simply put, how does a company make money, the company that you work in? If they make money in this way, where does marketing fit into all of this? And how can I show the impact of what I'm doing with certain numbers that the company might be putting out? And that's the straight way to understand whether marketing is driving some value for the company and the business and the customers or not. The other part, obviously, is understanding the basics, like the CAC, the LTV, what are cohorts, what is the role of attribution, and then using all this to be able to do experiments and understand what's really working. So you don't need to be a data scientist, but you need to be able to interpret the data. And something that I always tell my team, and I'm just going to repeat that again, which I've said before, it's not just numbers. The numbers are actually people. So try and start thinking of what's telling you about the people.
Understood. So right now, you're currently working in B2B travel technology, which is fascinating, right? But what's the biggest misconception people have about airline retailing?
I think the whole journey of what
Mm-hmm.
it takes to get a boarding
Mm-hmm.
pass is something that a lot of people
Mm.
don't understand, right? The airline retailing business works on a lot of legacy tech, but now
Mm.
trying to modernize not only for you and me as end consumers, but also modernize for the travel sellers, because they form a big part of the travel ecosystem. And it's not really just about transforming airline distribution, which is what we do, but the direct translation of that is, it's about retailing. How does an airline create a modern retailing experience that helps customers understand the value of that seat better? And, that's in principle what one has to understand. This journey about when you buy a ticket today, it might be you come to a website, you see, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
text results, and you say, oh, this is the cheapest and let me buy. But those are not the only factors. You have ancillaries, you have different kinds of fare classes. You might want to spend more on
Mm-hmm.
premium economy. But today, no website is really helping you with why should I pay more for a premium economy ticket? So you don't get that same retail experience that you get on a lot of other retailing sites. And
Mm-hmm.
business we are in is really trying to provide that retailing experience.
Got it. Say, when transforming traditional industries, like especially like travel, what does product marketing really look like?
I think it's about building clarity. So you're taking a complex
Mm-hmm.
product, but you're building the clarity around it by saying, first of all, where is the industry? Uh, why do you need this tool at all? What does it do for you, right? And then it's about, okay, my particular tool or my particular product delivers this product value to you as a customer, and then it helps you achieve these commercial goals. And thereby, when I understand how I'm building commercial goals for an airline or a travel seller, I can then help sales in a much better way to do sales enablement. So I think the product marketing in this scenario is really about the customer pain points, what's the market reality, and it's also education because the industry is so new. Well, the industry is not new, but the technology that we are working on is so new. Airlines and sellers both need to understand the value of the technology, not just the value of our own product.
Got it. Say, inside a B2B SaaS or travel tech company, right? What does building a modern growth engine look like and involve, right?
It's primarily, to me, it's about clarity and positioning. Your product positioning has to be
Mm-hmm.
absolutely clear. You've got to understand who are your customer personas, and then you've got to start layering the kind of work you do in marketing absolutely tailored to those personas. And you have to do it consistently because the sales cycles are very long. So if your sales cycles are going to be between 3 months to 18 months, you've got to be consistent in the kind of marketing that you're doing, and you've got to keep tracking your pipeline health. So
Mm-hmm.
in that sense, building this growth engine is really about consistency. It's not necessarily about, in B2C, for example, it could be about big campaigns or that one big idea. Here, it's about consistency 12 months of the year. That would be the biggest difference.
Got it. Since we are also talking about B2C, right? Like, what are the key differences? You have predominantly worked with B2C brands, right?
Yes.
Here the difference is it's B2B.
Yeah.
What are the key differences that most people don't get or underestimate, right? Like between B2B and B2C.
I think the first one is just multiple stakeholders and the complexity of buying committees, because it's very different to
Mm,
speak to one customer, and it's very different when you're talking to six or seven different types of personas in a company,
mm,
each of whom KPI trying to meet. The second part is the sales cycle. So an 18-month sales
mm,
cycle is very long. And how do you then keep yourself and your team motivated to keep going at it, but also to keep the customer interested for that long? That's a long period of time. And
got
I
it.
think the third one is the inertia. So most companies do not want to switch, right? And they often
Mm,
nobody is going to get fired. As I used to say back in the day, nobody is going to get
yeah,
fired for IBM. Then they said nobody's going to get fired for choosing Oracle. So when you come as a new tool or a new technology or a new company, battling that high switching cost goes way beyond marketing. And
yeah.
these three things I think that are quite different.
Mm, got it. I think in one of our conversations, you mentioned about many travel sellers, right? Still operate on black screen, green text kind of
Yes.
systems.
Yes.
How does this like kind of legacy infrastructure limit innovation?
I think it limits innovation because, firstly, sellers today, if they use this sort of old school system, they can't
Mm,
personalize or upsell really well. They don't have, let's say, the customer's
uh,
loyalty data. They don't know what makes the customer
yeah.
excited.
Mm,
And like I said, some things can sell themselves, like a flatbed first class. Okay, a really rich person who
mm,
needs a flat first class is just going to go buy it. But for customers like you and me, who might make a switch from economy to premium economy, there has to be a clear reason. without providing that experience, it's hard to do. And then the third part, I think, about the impact of innovation is it impacts the revenue, because
Mm,
the more you're able to provide a better customer experience, the more you're able to show it, the more you're able to build revenue, and that revenue can help you actually improve many more things for customers. So I think a lot of this is just in old systems where people are just continuing with what's comfortable. But how does a travel seller today stay relevant in the age of AI when anyone can go to an
mm,
AI, plan this itinerary for me? So there has to be something the seller brings to the table, but unless
mm.
they have the technology and the tools to do it, they can't.
Got it. Since you have brought in the magic word, right? AI. So maybe we'll talk more about AI.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, AI tools are everywhere, right? And marketers often feel overwhelmed. From your
Yes.
experience, right? From being in an era where digital transformation and digital marketing was also pretty new, like AI now. From your experience, what is the right way for organizations to adopt to AI?
Yeah. Well, I'll start by saying that for any marketers who are listening, that
Mm,
I've been, so AI is changing so fast. There was a time when, well, there is still a time, Gemini announces something, and then,
mm,
OpenAI announces something, and then Anthropic announces something, and Perplexity, and you just can't keep up with the scale. So I think we are at a time when we have to live with this for a bit, because this technology is in an evolutionary phase and things are
mm,
constantly changing. And having said that, while one may get excited with every new, let's say, incremental change, every new innovation, every new tool, it's important to go back to the basics, just like digital transformation, which is, what are the use cases? What am I trying to solve for? So am I trying
mm,
to speed at which the team is working? Am I trying to improve my creative output? Am I trying to find efficiency? Am I trying to, so what is it that I want to achieve? And then
yeah.
again, implement something in AI, create a workflow, build an agentic AI, whatever that means, and show the impact on either your marketing efficiency or your customer acquisition cost or LTVs, in a sense, if your business moves that fast, and then try and scale it, rather than saying, I'm going to try and do great video and great presentation and great creative, as
Mm,
well as I'm data, and I'm going to have data insights, and I'm going to serve 100 different customers at the same time using AI. But if you're serving 100 different ads that are not connecting with the customer, they're all wasted anyway. So start with a use case and use the first principles of marketing.
got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Uh, See, from your perspective, which part of marketing will AI transform the most?
Well, I think content operations, so just the scale,
Mm,
creating content scale, AI is clearly great at that. It can, I mean, it's great at that with human input. Obviously, it's not unchecked, but that's one thing that I can think of. The second part is about analytics, and how quickly we're able to get insights, because a lot of the traditional data analytics can be done much faster from an AI perspective.
true.
The third part is perhaps segmentation, because today our segments might be 100, but to
Mm,
me, you could million customer segments, because
yeah,
you can get sharp as you want with the data that you want over time. Um, and the fourth is hopefully better forecasting.
got it. Which part of marketing will always need human intuition and brand thinking, right?
Well, I think positioning, the
Mm,
emotion resonance of a piece of creative, ultimately
mm,
AI can create a lot of things, but it's a human being that needs to decide, what does a brand stand for, and does this particular piece, campaign, idea, metrics, does it stand true to what my brand positioning is?
got it. So, to all the young marketers out there, right? What's one underrated skill marketers should build today to stay future proof?
I think that is quite interesting, because I'll say that it's not about
Mm,
jobs getting taken over by AI. It's,
mm,
as they say, about who can learn to harness AI, right? And those are the kind of people that are going to survive in this day and age. So I think for me, that skill is probably problem framing. Like, if you can define a question sharply, you can set the context for AI, and you can work
mm,
iteratively to improve. You get a much sharper, faster output. And that's really, really important. And this cannot be done just by AI by itself. It's really about the context that human beings are building for the AI to be able to get the right kind of output.
Understood. So I think the next segment would be mostly your personal insights on leadership
Yeah.
and team management, right? You've worked with multiple agencies, right? And also you've worked across consulting and corporate environments. What leadership lesson stands out for you, right? What's that one leadership lesson which stands out for you?
Yeah. I don't know if I have one, but I perhaps have a couple.
Okay.
The first one in all of this, the ability to do different things, I think is
Mm,
to come from a position of humility and to not
mm,
approach things with go, right? So for me,
mm,
whether, move from agencies, consulting, corporate, whatever it might be, it's not what it says on your business card, it's the value that you bring to the table. I think that's the underlying principle. And you need to be a translator across teams. You need to work with sales, operations, product, technology, and you need to create or be part of a shared vision. So either
mm,
you as a leader set that shared vision so every single team understands it, or you, even as part of a team, have to understand the shared vision and work with teams on the same ethos.
mhm,
Um, and then I think the other part about a leadership lesson is not everything is long term. Yes, you have to think long term,
mm.
but you deliver some quick wins because it's the quick wins that build trust in a leader. And ultimately, charisma can only take you so far. So you need to have clarity.
Yeah, got it. That makes a lot of sense. Say, if you are mentoring a young marketer today, right? What three pieces of advice would you give?
Learn the customer, learn
Mm-hmm.
the data, and volunteer for anything that's big, ambitious, and messy where you don't know what you're going to do, or volunteer for something that scares you because that's the
Okay,
only way you're.
got it. What does a high performing marketing team would look like in 2026?
Well, I think it would be a marketing team that has marketers, but also has agentic AI for specific purposes. And to me, that's sort of 2026 team. It's not just going to be human beings, but human beings who can leverage things.
Mm-hmm.
And from the standpoint of a human being, everything today is about the product, whether it's B2C or B2B. It's going back to product innately. So
Mm,
product fluent marketers, people who have the discipline to optimize, iterate, and build. Those are skills that are not going to go away.
got it. What's this one mistake, or it can be multiple as well, right? You see companies repeatedly making with their marketing, right? What do they make with their marketing, which something can be avoided or ignored?
Focusing on optimizing for channels, optimizing for
Hmm.
numbers, optimizing for tools without really fixing your brand positioning and your brand story and understanding the customer journey. So you can do all the optimization and iteration, but if the heart of the brand is not clear, the performance is not
Mm,
going to be clear.
got it. I think the final question in this segment is about mind shift, right? I think you've undergone a lot of transitions in career, right? What is that mind set shift that had the biggest impact on your career?
Wanting transformation, personally, even not just for
Mm-hmm.
organizations. For me, it's like I said, it's about evolution, learning new things, and then trying to always see how can I up my game and what does that mean. So up my game does not have to be a bigger job. Up my game does not have to be more money. Up my game can simply be, this is what I've been doing for 10 years, but how can I do something else fundamentally different but linked to this that helps
Hmm.
drive growth? So it's really about always staying in an evolutionary mode.
Namrata, this has been a incredibly insightful session. Thank you for sharing your journey from the early days of your digital in India to global brands to driving large scale transformation in Dubai and now shaping the future of travel tech. Today's conversations leaves us with three powerful takeaways. Marketing is strongest when brand and data work together. Transformation starts with deep customer understanding, not just tools. And while AI will accelerate marketing, but human story will always win, right? So these are my three takeaways from your conversation. And I think it was lovely understanding your experience and learning a lot from that, right? We'll try to connect back again. Thank you for joining us on this show, Marketing Growth Circle, a show by ROAS Digital.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure being here. And the only thing I like to end with is an old but still very relevant phrase: stay hungry, stay foolish.